we'll call the meeting of the Hood River Bridge Authority to order again at 2 o'clock on January 13th, 2025. I will take roll call. We have on our Oregon Commissioners, Commissioners Fox, Babbitts, Olson are present. Alternates Thomas. Is Nate online yet? He was supposed to be here. Nope. On the Washington side, we have Commissioner Anderson present. We have alternates Wilson and Berger are both here, so we have a quorum. I will start this meeting per our motion from last year. I will be turning over the chair number 1 position to my esteemed colleague, Mike Fox, to run this meeting and all the meetings for the year. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for doing that, and big shoes to fill, but we'll see what we can do here. When we're looking at our agenda, modifications, addition to the agenda, any suggestions or to the agenda? Everybody's okay with it? Looking online. Arthur, you got your hand up.
No, that's not my hand up. That was applause. I was applauding Jake's good work.
Oh, okay.
Did I put the wrong reaction? I thought that was applause there. Yeah, that's applause.
Okay, good. Agree with you. Okay, so if there's no modifications or additions, we'll go ahead and proceed. How about any corrections or modifications to the minutes? And if not, could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It passed. Okay, public comment, 3 minutes per person, 30-minute maximum. I don't believe we've had anybody sign in for such public comment. Anybody online? Raise your hand if you will. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and proceed forward. Executive reports. Co-chairs reports. I'll take the first one. It's kind of an overview. What I think is important, what keeps me up at night, is I've got about 4 or 5 items here. One is funding. We've got to keep our focus on funding. The $75 million from the infra is super critical for us to continue on. So we'll be watching that very closely, and I'm sure we'll get some updates today on that, as is the balance of funding from both states. We're well into that program now. And then also we've got a couple of vehicles for loans that we're looking at. Second item that I think is really important to pay attention to is the OPC, opinion of probable cost. I think it's important that we all realize that today, our target price on this project is $1.120 billion. That hasn't changed. We're going through some estimate reviews by both the ICE team and Kiewit, and we're going to get a report on that a little bit later today. But we still have work to go on that. We still have to go through a contingency analysis, a risk workshop, and identify some opportunities there to hopefully save some money down the road. So that whole OPC is something that I'm very well aware of. The next major item that I see for us is negotiating with Kiewit on 1B, which is the design release of design. And our target date on that, I believe, is April the 2nd. I just don't want it to be April 1st for obvious reasons. So that's kind of up in my mind. The third item is the ROD and the associated MOAs. That's super critical for us going forward. The next one is a new one that I think we've been looking at a little bit. It's a new thing called person in charge. This is something that the Federal Highways is really pushing us, that we need to get not an authority, but a permanent person under hire that is responsible for this project to us. We've been using Mike in that regard, and to a lesser extent, some folks from the port. But I think we're getting a lot of discussion with the federal highway folks that they want a permanent dedicated person to fill that role. And I know our organizational group under Arthur is looking at, okay, what's that going to be? What's the job responsibility and so on? And hopefully we'll get a kind of a look at that in the not too distant future. Those are the key ones that are keeping me up. Turn it over to my esteemed colleague. Do you have any?
Thank you, Commissioner Fox. I would just let the record show that we have alternate Duval online as well. And I would just, when I'm looking at all the names on the screen and in the room, it's the start of 2025. We made it, we survived. And when I look at all the things that we've got accomplished in the last couple of years and over the last 4 years that most of us have been involved in sitting on this when it was the Bi-State Bridge Commission. It's amazing to see how far we've got. And I just wanted to give a thank you to all of our members. You guys have all been acting that are board members in an executive capacity, not just in a policy direction. You are all so involved. You've given countless hours, and I can't thank you all enough. I also wanted to thank our agency members, both with Federal Highways, ODOT, WashDOT, and all of our partners. We can't get anywhere without you guys. And I know so many hours that you've put into this, trying to get this bridge built. It means so much to me. And I really respect everyone's hard work and professional nature. For the last 4 years, this was the one organization, one group that I enjoyed being on more than all the rest.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's go to our project director reports. Mike.
All right, thank you. You'll see in the packet, there were some goals put in for the calendar year of 2025. You'll see a lot of those are reflective of what Mike just spoke to, and we'll get to a lot of those. So I'm going to try and avoid duplicating it when we go through informational items, and we'll go through some of the backup documents that we included in the packet and walk through some of those in detail. One of the things that I do want to make sure everybody's aware of, and that is the service agreement and stewardship agreement that we need to get developed with FHWA and ODOT. That has become critical. I'm hoping that we'll maybe get an update from FHWA and ODOT on that. I know ODOT sent me an email on it that it's top on their list to get that service agreement done. And part of this is the transition of the project from the planning phase to the design phase. And because the authority is now direct recipient of the grant funds and that they are not flowing through ODOT, it changes ODOT's role. So, but in order for us to finalize the service agreement with ODOT, we need to finalize the FHWA stewardship agreement that will allow us then to discuss with ODOT and get the STIP updated in order to be able to talk to ODOT about some of the roles that we want them to take on. For example, the right-of-way with the port where we have a conflict of interest. So those are two top documents that we need to get done here in the near future. You'll see in the goals that there's other dates and goals in there for when we get some of this other stuff resolved as well for this year. So, that's all I have right now. We'll cover the other in detail at the informational.
Okay, how about legal report? Who wants to go first? Mark or?
I do not have the legal report. Judy and I switched kind of at the last minute for this meeting, so apologize for that, and I'll present it at the next meeting.
Okay.
Don't see Judy online.
Is Judy online?
Swapped places.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going then. Government relations. Dan.
Mr. Chair Fox. For the record, my name is Dan Marr, local consultant handling government relations strategy. for the project. I'll be giving a quick update from the states before turning it over to Jim Kolb from Summit Strategies, who will talk about the federal picture a bit. Today is the official kickoff to legislative session in Washington. And so last week, both state lobbying teams gave updates and a little bit of a pre-session preview to the Government Relations and Comms Committee. And this week, they're very much engaged in session activities. So in Washington, like I said, they're kicking off today. Legislature has a lot of big thorny issues in front of it, revenue generation, transportation funding. And so it's going to take a little bit of time before the transportation funding picture becomes clearer in Washington State. In the meantime, Brad Boswell will continue, doing his regular meetings in the Capitol, calling on us to engage when it makes sense. We have a Washington State Lobbying Day scheduled for February 20th. There's some number of folks from the authority will be traveling to Olympia to meet with a number of relevant legislators. So, on the Oregon side, they kick off on Tuesday after the holiday, and very similar, although we're pretty sure a transportation package will be coming through in Oregon, but it's going to take a couple months before, the legislature and the transportation committee itself is going to be working on a lot of different, policy bills, et cetera, and it'll take a little while for that picture to come into focus. And so similarly, Dan and Maddie will be working in the building. We're working to schedule a lobbying day also for some time in mid-February to get the authority folks down and meet with legislative leadership. So we're staying nimble, we're staying engaged, and ready to do our work down there when the moment calls for it. Maybe I'll pause right there and see if there are any questions about the states before we turn it over to Jim.
On the state side, everything's moving along. They're going with the bond sale. We don't see any hiccup.
Oh, for the first tranche of
Right.
$20 million. Mike, can you speak to
Yeah,
that?
so on the Oregon side, we got some questions from Oregon related to the Oregon bond sale, just asking us when we're going to use the money, when we need the money, do we want to delay it for any reason? We've responded to those questions, sent that back to them that yes, we need the money now. Here's the time frame that it will cover. It really gets us from March to April, so that we can get our additional funding. So we've sent that back. They're planning April as the date for the bond sale.
Yeah, and the way for
Yeah.
the fund will be available after that, so probably May, so we put our cash flow to spend the $20 million from May through
Okay.
August.
Okay, so then the other piece of this is the 105 million from Oregon outside of the bond. And I know, how are we doing on that?
Sure. So Thorn Run got a bill filed pre-session. So the sponsors are Representative Helfrich and Senator Bonham. Co-chair McLean intends to sign on to that as well. So that's a standalone bill that we're running, and it has our phased ask as part of the bill text. And so the ask, Mike, fact check me on this, but the plan is to ask for $75 million in the biennium that starts in 2025, with the remaining 30 in the 2027 to 28 biennium. So that's a placeholder.
Okay.
There's two paths possible for the Oregon legislature. One is the transportation package comes together. All the different projects that are getting funding are, they kind of jockey for a position and resources within that. That passes as a big bill all on its own. If that bill doesn't come together, or for some reason it comes together and we're not in it,
That's our fallback.
then we have that standalone bill.
Okay, and how about the same thing on the Washington side? Their deficit is 50, right?
50 million. And on the Washington side, the plan is, different dynamics there, right? We're less sure about a transportation package coming together. If one does not come together, our chances of getting something through as a standalone are pretty low. But the plan is to ask for I think it's the full 50, right, not in the current biennium, not 25, 26 biennium, since we've got that first 75 to kind of get us through the next couple of years. But the 50 would be either in the next 1 or 2 biennia.
Okay, and we've got access to the 75.
We have access to the 75 as it's allocated with
Which
the
is-
leap year, which is 30 starting in 25, 27, 30 in 27, 29. And then what we've asked is the additional 50 is that they put that within a programmed year. Right now, it's in there as future funds in what they call their LEAP document, which is their budget document. The ask this year is that that get put into the LEAP document so that it's a more committed number. And we've said that flexibility is up to them on where within that program, but we need that commitment from them for the remaining 50.
Okay. And then the next question is federal.
Sure.
Sorry.
Commissioner, did you have an extra?
Don't we have, there's still the restriction that if Oregon doesn't pass more funding, then the Washington dries up.
Exactly.
So there is budget language in the Washington governor's budget that says that the 30 million relies on Oregon matching that amount. So we haven't had to challenge that yet because Oregon has stepped up and matched it in the past. So we're hopeful that we'll see that again. And if they are able to match that, then that language doesn't matter. We'll get both. If they aren't able to match it, then we will have to have some more discussions about that one.
But if we can get Oregon either through a transportation bill or the separate bill for the 105, then we're home free on the Washington side.
At
As
least
far
for
as
the
that.
75, yes, and as far as that language,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's almost, you tell Oregon, it's, you give 20, then we get 40. And then you have access to 40
Double your
then.
match.
Can double your money.
The deal.
Hey, it works on Facebook, right?
Talk to us about federal.
I see Jim up on the video. You want to take it away, Jim?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, we continue to work closely with Mike and Dan and the team, pushing forward on trying to get a project agreement in place to be able to do some of the pre-construction activities, working closely with the delegation, all of whom have reached out to FHWA and the Office of Secretary to just communicate the urgency here, and all got kind of back a similar boilerplate response that they understand that there's urgency and, they're working to get it done. But, we continue to talk to them, provide them status updates, as to, what's happening on the ground in terms of, some of the more recent discussions that the team's been having with Federal Highways in terms of trying to get the project agreement done. We, also just continue to provide them status on that. And, are prepared to go back to them as needed to try to backfill or back up any of the discussions that are occurring, with the division offices. So, we got the open line of communication there. Also had, continue to have conversations with the Office of Secretary political leadership, as well as some folks at Federal Highways. Again, similar, just kind of letting them know what we're hearing and that we're still, trying to push this forward, and the team's working with the division office to try to get the project agreements in place as soon as possible. And then lastly, we had Commissioner Thomas out to DC. She was in town for a meeting, and we had hoped to do some in-person meetings, but you got to see what happens in DC when it snows. So everything converted.
Nothing happens. It's terrible.
Yeah, so everything converted to virtual, but we had some really good meetings with now Congresswoman Dexter's office, her legislative team. I think we had the first policy meeting with her office 9:00 on Monday morning. Technically, her first official business day, I guess second after the swearing in day. So we had that meeting with her office, which was good. Just the Congresswoman has been out to the bridge, but it was good to get her staff, up to speed on where we are, where things stand. Asked her for a letter of support for the BIP application, which we'll be following up with her on, as well as some other information she was seeking. Also, Senator Merkley has some new legislative staff, new transportation staff handling these issues. So we also had a meeting with his team, just to kind of walk them through, educate them, invite them out to the bridge, thank them for, what the senator and the folks that came before them did in terms of getting a letter of support and contacting the DOT. So, it's really a great opportunity to introduce, the project to these new folks and to try to, build on the relationships we've had there and just keep them in the loop as we move forward here. So, positive meetings despite the snow. Other than that, we're going to hopefully continue to push to get the project agreement in place, tracking what's happening with the transition team and the folks, the landing team over at DOT, and then monitoring kind of the timing for when it would make sense to have a delegation come out, meet with folks at DOT once they've got some boots on the ground over there and the right people we can talk to. So,
So Jim, in your opinion, do you believe that everybody that needs to know knows that we desperately need the 75 or we can't start design?
yeah, I mean, that's been the message that's been communicated up and down the line, that we need to, that there's an urgency here to get moving forward on this. So yeah, and we'll continue to communicate that.
And if we could we jump over to Carrie? Carrie, do you have any updates on the bid? Our application there? And you're on mute. This is a test to see if you're really in attendance.
All right. I had to acknowledge that I was being recorded. So that was the holdup. That was a holdup there. I do not have any updates on BIP, and that even goes to a meeting we had this morning with people who might know more than we do. We sat down with Build America Bureau this morning just for kind of our every 2 months update there. And I think the consensus is among everybody that as far as anybody knows officially, things will just continue to move forward as they have. I think that the decisions on BIP are probably made and are sitting on someone's desk. The problem is there may be someone new sitting at that desk after next week. And so, whether that new person is inclined to keep things moving or is inclined to press pause and want to take a look at those themselves remains to be seen. I think our position in terms of being highly recommended doesn't change. And, I think what we're doing is hoping that there will be some inspiration to keep these things moving. We also heard that if we have not heard by now, and it was actually by the end of last week, if we have not heard by the end of last week, it is not likely that we would hear this week. I do know that in past inaugurations, there have been major grant announcements the morning of the inauguration, but I've been told not to hold my breath on that one.
If I can just add there.
Sure, Jay.
So in our correspondence, in our outreach with the congressional offices in Oregon and Washington, in addition to, of course, stressing the importance of finalizing the grant agreement, the funding agreement with FHWA, we also wanted to use that as an opportunity to once again, in addition to the letters that they've sent, say how important the Bridge Investment Program grant is. And as part of the standard response that we got from all the offices, USDOT consistently said, we aim to get the large bridge portion of BIP announced this winter. So for those of you who are keeping score, winter can technically go all the way till March 20th. We, of course, highlighted that January 20th is a much more useful date in terms of if there's potential for getting an announcement before then. But I just want to let you know that they were using the standard of winter as their response to us and nothing more specific. Carrie, again, might have far more specific info in the last couple of days, but I just want to let you know what they told the congressional offices.
Thank you, Jake. Anything else on that side? Any questions anybody has?
Just FYI for everybody, Merkley's going to be here in 12 days visiting town hall.
Okay, let's move to partner updates. Let's look at federal highways. Both Martin and Tom, maybe Tom, introduce yourself. You're new to the team.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Tom Goldstein. I am going to be the future project oversight manager for this project, taking over for Marty. We're just in the middle of transitioning right now. I have been working on the IBR, and we'll continue to also work on that project along with this project. So looking forward to working with everybody, and definitely looking to get out there and meet up with folks and kind of have some good discussions on the getting to know the project.
Well, first off, Marty, thanks so much for everything that you've done with us. It's been a pleasure working with you. And we wish you nothing but the best in the future. And don't forget us.
Oh yeah, definitely. I appreciate that. I'm not going anywhere. I'll still be around. I won't be the primary point, but I'll still be around for the operation stuff, especially as you start getting into construction. I'll be.
Yeah.
I've already made him promise I could be the one to come out to do the inspections. So I plan to be around.
And Tom, thanks for making this your priority project. You know, that other little one down the river, it'll come eventually, but this is the most important one. We appreciate you recognizing that. Anything else from you guys?
No, that was my big news, which yeah. So that's fun. But yeah, we'll make sure I'm sticking around and we'll transition smoothly so that we don't just lose all the hard work we've done. And because I'd say it's been great working with all of you also. It's so I'm gonna miss it. This project's been a big part of my to-do list. So it's everything else is gonna feel a little smaller after this. So thanks.
Okay, anybody from ODOT or WashDOT? I don't see anybody. Who?
Rob.
Yeah, Rob.
I don't really have anything except for Michael, just technical clarification. It's not the stewardship agreement, it's the charter.
I'm sorry, yes.
The stewardship
It's a service
is-
agreement and stewardship charter. Yes, sorry.
Just charter, no, just technical.
Not a stewardship. Okay.
When I did get through the lottery stuff and I forwarded that right away, so I didn't hear
Great.
you. So
one question, what about the STIP? They're right before we left for the holidays, you all were gonna, FHWA and you all were gonna coordinate on getting the STIP. Has that been completed?
I sent the information to our STIP people, and our STIP people were going to talk directly to Federal Highway, and I don't know if that happened yet.
Sorry, son.
Any chance we could get you to make a phone call or maybe
I can tell you, yeah, they're Jasmine, our coordinator, is working with ODOT right now to get that. So it's actively being worked on. There's been some emails going back and forth today. So
right.
Okay. I'll follow up with you all then, because that really starts to open up us being able to go talk to ODOT right away and get that scope, and we can now start getting the service agreement and everything else moving. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, before we close this area out, Jane.
I'm sorry, Caroline is with, where'd she go? There she is. She is with WashDOT.
Yeah, Caroline, anything from WashDOT? You're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, no, nothing new from WashDOT at this point. We just reviewed what was turned in, and I have sent our comment and wait to hear from you.
We got some comments from
WashDOT.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get those turned back around. Appreciate it. And before we close this area out, I'd like to invite James Shear from Keywood, if there's anything you'd like to update.
Hi, good afternoon. No updates from me. Thank you.
Okay. Any open items, action items? I don't think we have any. Okay, let's move into consent agenda. There's a number of invoices. Mike, you want to walk us through those?
Yeah, I mean, we included the invoices in the packet. They have went through the appropriate reviews based on where they are in the system, either through the engineering and finance committee or They are being submitted and we'll go through that as a post-interview process in order to expedite the payment process. I will say, maybe take a minute to bring up on the invoices. We do have, I know we have the agreement in process. We also have an agreement with HRWSBA to be able to pay off of invoice. This month, we will be starting our month by month reimbursement invoicing. Right now, we're billing from a WashDOT grant source, so we're able to bill off invoice, but it is still taking over the 30 days to do that. So there is a pretty big concern that we will not be able to meet payment rules with some of the process of having to pay when we get paid from the grants. So I just want to make sure everybody keeps that on the top of their mind. That has not been resolved yet. And it will be an impact to the project, especially to some of the small stubs, where we have them 60, 90 days, 120 days before they can get payment. And that's painful for some small farms. So we'll continue to work that, but I want to make sure it's still top of mind.
So I would certainly say that once we get the agreement with federal to get access to the 75 million, we need to turn right back around and try and get an agreement to pay on invoice.
Well, they already have the invoice payment request. So that is in review by them. We're just waiting on approval of that.
Yeah, their response to the request was that they will make a determination whether they want to go that way or not when they determine the intra-grant agreement. So it ties to the $75 million we'll have into. So hopefully they will go.
Okay.
I just want everybody to be aware because we may have to make some modifications to contracts as well as you may hear from some of the small business owners about what the impact of this is to their business. So we're already hearing it. So
this is where we may need to tap into the $5 million loan from the state or
Other funding sources, yes.
yeah.
So
Well,
just want to keep that top of mind.
I appreciate, and as a small business owner, I understand in order to work on large federal projects, you understand the invoicing schedule. And if you don't, that's sort of
It's
awakening. But I urge us, yes, we hear it, we're going to do as best we can, but we cannot pay people if we don't have the money. And in order to work on this project, these are the stipulations that we have. And as long as we're not infracting those contracts, personally, I see, I am a small business owner. I play with the federal government. I understand. Yes, it's hard, but at the same time,
So
we can't do anything. Our hands are tied.
a couple things have changed on this project. When we first started this project, we were using some money that we had in hand, like ARPA. So we were able to pay much quicker and contracts were set up based on that. With the change in how we're be able to bill and how it's being reimbursed through the federal grants, that has changed our ability to be able to pay people with according to how they signed up for this project. So they signed up under one thing and they're now being asked to do something different.
So are we in breach of our own contracts? I guess is that we are.
Yeah.
Okay,
And-
so that is a different, I think we should then, that is a different conversation. But at the same time, then we need to rewrite our contract. If we know we are going to be in breach of contracts, then my suggestion is we probably should rewrite contracts because why would we intentionally go forward with breaching our own contracts if we know this is going to be an issue?
So we're monitoring for the first 3 months of this year to see what the process looks like. Because we're not really sure how quickly things will get through different systems. Once we know that after the first 3 months, we may come back and have to modify contracts. Which may
It'll cost money.
Or it may end up in us losing some subs because they may not be willing to sign up for our payment terms.
Have we notified the subs that we are going to be late?
They were aware, but not this extent.
Right.
So we are preparing a letter to communicate with them what we are doing, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I agree that we need to be upfront with these folks because they signed up for a deal. We're changing the deal on them. So we need to talk to them. The other thing I would really encourage, funding and finance to perhaps accelerate, if we can, a vehicle that allows us to, these are small contracts. Where I'm really worried about the pay on invoices when we're really into construction and we got big.
$17 million, yeah.
Yeah, so we
Mhm.
sent one sub who asked about it an email, and I talked with Friday about sending it to all of our subs and letting them know. But we also will need to send it to, I think, every contract that the
But again, I would really encourage that funding and finance look at these types of contracts over the next period of time. Does it make sense to try and accelerate a loan agreement to keep them whole?
some of them are subs to us. So we have to look into the complexities of being able to do that and break out pay a sub quicker than another sub. So we'll have to
Well,
think
so
about that.
to go back to my statement, because we're on public meeting, if we are not, if we are agreed to pay in one certain way and we are not paying in that way, that is a completely different comment that I would make. We should be paying how we should be paying based on that. And subs signed up because they assumed it was one way. If we are changing it, I am urging us to immediately, to at least to notify these small business owners and allow them the respectful option to fire us as a client if our billing structure is not gonna potentially. So I just want to be clear,
That
because
process has started.
that is a different thing.
Yeah.
And as long as we're aware, if we need to rewrite contracts, we should be doing that, because last thing we want is a public say we're in breach of contract paying sub.
So
Yeah,
we started notifying them.
Yep,
We're
heard. Yep.
giving them an update that we'll let them know come April what we're gonna do, because like I said, we're working through making sure what the actual, because I don't know, right now, I don't know what to tell you to change your contract to until we see what the process is gonna be with the different grants. Yes, we most likely will be bringing you revised contracts for payment terms.
Okay, let's move forward. Is there?
I would just note that Commissioner Gilchrist or alternate Gilchrist is present, and I got a message that Commissioner Gibson is online as well, but he must be on the next page.
Okay.
And with that, I would make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
And a second.
Second. Online.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, committee reports, funding and finance.
Ben's going to give the funding and finance report this time.
Hey, everybody. So this meeting was around a month ago, so not exactly fresh. I'm going off notes, but we talked about cash flow and went through the PCE, looking at where current funding takes us and forecasted funding, looking like current grants take us through May. And then we talked about some of the loan, the State Infrastructure Bank loan facility would buy us basically another 2 months. And then we'll be looking for infra and Oregon lottery. And then I'm sure that the information on the infra agreement is more current than what we discussed at that meeting. It sounds like we're still kind of trying to make progress there. And then we'll be assessing the what we're calling the pay-as-you-go facility, the money that we're borrowing from the Port of Hood River in order to pay the bills that are non-reimbursable. So at our next meeting, we're going to go through that and draw up what we anticipate the timeline on that facility to be, and start working on planning for how to replace that, or what comes next for that facility. I do also want to put in a little bit of a plug that, as we're starting to look at hiring staff, we have an RFQ that's out for a consultant to help us with our overhead rates. And without overhead rates, we don't have a way of reimbursing for any additional staff that would work for the Port Authority, or sorry, for the Bridge Authority. And so that's a pretty important one for us to figure out how we're going to fund that, those positions. That's all I have.
When do you expect to have that request?
Which request?
Going for a consultant for establishing your overhead rates.
Let's see, can somebody else take that with the, Mike, do you have the latest on where that is?
We are going to go out to procure that consulting service as of this week. So
A couple of weeks.
yeah,
Okay.
good. This week.
All right, and then you'll bring the recommendation back.
Yes, sir.
To the subcommittee first and then to the board. Okay. Thank you. Okay, engineering construction, we really haven't met since the last meeting. But maybe you take a couple of minutes and talk a little bit more detail about your trip out to the East Coast. And
We had the OPCs, so we've actually done quite a bit of work, I think.
yeah, and we can talk about all that too.
Sir, but I did get to go out to DC and I did get to meet with the staff as discussed. It was more of an education kind of, just bringing on the new staff sort of up to date and really talking about why the bridge is needed and talking about really the messaging we had, based on the former administration and then the incoming, trying to ensure that it made sense for both administrations to support the bridge and the funding. And it was really great to do that. And I went through the OPC. That was hours of my life where I learned a lot about a lot of different things. And I'm excited for the meeting coming up on January 28th. And then we've also had a lot of meetings about the MOAs and the different tribes as well. So although we haven't met, there's been quite a bit of meetings.
Lots of discussion.
So
Some of us attended a federal highways contract training class.
How'd that go?
2-day class. It was really good. That's where we met Tom. Yeah, Tom was there. We got to spend a couple of days with him. It was good.
Yeah, so Mike, out of that training, we have developed action plans and to comply with what they request and comply with all the regulation. It's almost done, and we're gonna share with other commissioners and co-chairs who attended the training and get the feedback on that so that we can have a more comprehensive action plan.
Any thoughts from you on the training?
I thought the training was really good to create the relationships with other federal highway folks who have done progressive design build in the past, and so that we can reach out to them when we need help. It sounds like different regions have more experience than others, and some of that depth is other places. And so I think the connections were great for us, but it was also probably likely just as good for the other federal highway folks to get those connections with the federal highway folks.
I'll tell you, I initially thought, okay, 2 days, am I really going to get anything out of it? I was wrong. It was good. It was a good 2-day investment. So. Anything, Eric, to add?
No, lots of discussion, lots of questions, and not a whole lot of answers yet. So it's kind of the way I'd sum it up.
Okay, let's move on to, governance, administration, operations. Arthur?
I think he got off.
Yeah, Arthur was leaving at 2:30.
Okay.
And is Doug online? He just got on.
Yeah, it's right there.
Oh, there's Doug.
Doug, can you give a quick brief on your committee? You're on mute. He's out walking the plant. All right. Do you have any?
Yeah, I just Doug has taken on the work on a potential executive director position and working on that. I don't know where he's at along that process, but I know he's working on it. He's been working as well with Kevin Greenwood from the Port of Hood River. So hopefully we'll get an update from them in the next week. That could be emailed out to everyone.
Okay, and let's see, the communications is a second meeting, but does anybody want to bring anything up on communications? Before we move on. Jessica, do you have any input at all? If not, that's fine.
Hi, everyone. I don't have a really robust update for you, except that last week we got together, the government affairs and communications subcommittee members and Dan. We all got together and we started to strategize what we want to accomplish in phase 1B, as well as like in the next couple of quarters. And we're starting to develop some communications plans that we'll bring back to you all for review and discussion. So that's all in motion, and we're looking forward to doing a couple more strategy sessions in the coming weeks. So you might see some of us in the bridge office just plotting out ways to keep the public informed, stay focused on funding, and just making sure that we continue to elevate the progress that this project is making.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, let's go under new business, informational items. Mike, why don't you lead that section for us?
Great. Can you pull up the packet of the risk, if you've got it separately, pull up the risk? Actually, you know what, do you have, yeah, pull up the packet and go to the org chart first. Oh, okay, that's okay. Page 17. Right, so I was asked to put this together. We established the 4 committees last year, and they've kind of evolved a little bit and grown a little bit. We wanted to share just where some of the committees were and how they're delegating maybe some of the activities as they start to take on and more things become part of their thing. Assigning individual members to kind of lead items. So we wanted to put this out just so everybody was aware of that, and if the other committees wanted to do the same thing, or at least they were aware of what was kind of going on. So you can see here the engineering committee. So Commissioner Fox has taken on kind of the lead role in the OPC and the risk. The other members are still involved. It doesn't mean they're not involved, but he's kind of the point person on that. Catherine has taken on kind of the point position with some of the environmental documents. And then Eric was the point with the aesthetics. And you can see kind of the other committees there, but just wanted to put this in front of the group so you all are aware of this. And if you've got other assignments or things that you want to assign individual folks to be the point on, it does help the staff and design team to be able to have a point person to kind of work with, keeps that point person involved. It lessens, I think, the involvement of the overall committee and the overall members to not have to be worried about every little thing or 3 of you being involved. If we can get that point person, then we can move on and schedule things, just making sure we have that point person there.
This thing is going to continue to evolve. As an example, Eric picked up another item, it's the 106F coordination with the advisory committee. So this thing will evolve over time, and Jake Edwards has got the raised grant coordination.
Right. Yep, that's all.
And the only other change is the one under me can drop down under Gib, and I did hear back from Doug. He said he's on another call, but he'll be free in 15 minutes to give us an update.
Okay.
And that'll be good timing because there's one of the items here that we need to talk about that we need to get with them on. So switch over to the risk. Pull up the last page of the page 25. You know what? Go back. I'm sorry. Go back to the flow chart first.
21.
21 and 22. So these are two flow charts, or one flow chart that has two pages. We wanted to just walk through with everyone where we are with the opinion of probable cost, or estimating. You'll hear OPC, and make sure everyone knew where we were, what will be happening over the next couple months, and just it'll help for everyone to kind of understand the estimating and the pricing of the project as well. So we started this process at the end of last year, where the contractor and the ICE brought in their quantities, their unit costs. We met in December. We went through and validated each other's positions. They call it Read One, identified maybe different approaches or different scope or allocation of budget in different places, and walked through basically each line item, each quantity, and went through all of that for the major components of the project, with the idea then they are right now in the process of working out those differences and looking at where, or reallocating where they have money so that they're in a more consistent alignment. And then we will have what we call Read Two, where we will come back together again and do a final read where we will establish the baseline target price of the project out of that baseline 2 meeting, as well as the schedule component as well. So if you go to the next page. So from that baseline 2, that really will give us a owner's estimate. And the reason I say that is we're going to have different pricing. We're going to have the ICE's price, we're going to have the contractor's price, and then we're going to have kind of an agreed to target number for the project. So you'll see that there'll be some variability in what the potential of this project cost is going to be. Right now, we're not seeing any major impacts to the current target price of 1.12. We will then take that when we get out of the Read 2, and with FHWA, we'll go into a risk workshop. That risk workshop will take that base cost, base schedule, the opportunities and the threats to the project. We'll evaluate those. We'll run those through a Monte Carlo simulation, and that will then develop a profile for the project for the estimating. And the way FHWA likes to do it is they use the 70th percentile, which means that you have a 30% overrun potential and a 70% underrun potential. But they use that 70th number as the target price for the project. We will also, through that risk process, establish contingency buckets. So right now we just kind of have a big bucket number of contingency that's in there. We will allocate that contingency across the owner, the contractor, potentially even the owner's rep. So it'll get put into appropriate buckets. And then coming out of that, we will have a 70th percentile number with kind of bookends on the project cost. So we'll be able to speak to, here's our target price, here's the potential for increase, here's the potential for decrease. And then we will start to manage those opportunities and those threats. From that point of that Read 2 and that initial risk workshop, we will, as the design progresses, that's where we'll work through those opportunities and those threats, and we'll work towards our next OPC or estimate, which will be at 60%, which is approximately December of next year. That is contingent. I'm sorry, this year, 2025. Sorry, that seems like a long ways away. That is contingent on getting the infra grant agreement and giving a notice to proceed by April 1st in order to finish the 60% design and be able to do that estimate at the end of next year. And then roughly about 6 to 7 months after that, we'll do our third, which will be the 90% OPC, and then we will do a final estimate before we go into phase 2, and then we'll negotiate to see if we can get to a price to continue into construction, and we'll evaluate where we are on funding at that point. So that's just a high level overview of the process. So we'll talk about target price. That's kind of that 70th percentile number, but just everyone needs to be aware that there are opportunities and threats that we will be working through that could modify that number as we go forward. And that 70th percentile target price is what we have in our VIP application right now, and that is basically our funding target for the project.
Which right now is
1.12. Yes.
So just so I heard you correctly, to get to OPC at 60% is depending on a notice proceed April 2nd.
April 2nd, correct.
Okay.
So
And
it's
then-
basically, we want to get through the 60% design, and that's about 9 months. So 9 months from whenever we start the design, we'll be ready for our next update.
And what would prevent us from going to notice proceed on April 2nd?
I think we're waiting on the infragrant agreement. As soon as we get the infragrant agreement, we will be able to move forward.
I think if we got the 75 million tomorrow, we'd be pushing hard to accelerate getting into design.
We also have
earlier.
to do the negotiation.
Right now, right now we're working through the negotiations. It is scheduled to finish about April 2nd. But that is contingent on the getting the funding. So we want to be ready the day we get the funding, that we've got everything negotiated and in place so that we can immediately start to get into into the design.
Yes, question. Can you briefly talk about the Monte Carlo scenario? Because I think it sounds a whole lot more exciting than it probably is.
I will very highly talk about that.
I want just a 30-second version.
Yeah,
please.
Basically, we'll go through all the risks. We will identify a probability of them happening, and we will identify what the impact of that happening will be. So from a cost and schedule standpoint, the Monte Carlo will take in those probabilities and those impacts, both opportunities and threats, so pluses and minuses. It runs something
models,
and it spits back out, here's what your 70th percentile chance. So it's a statistical analysis is what it is.
That's exactly what it is. And it's 100,000 iterations.
Yeah.
And it'll come out with an S curve. And the S curve is the probability of overrun at a certain value, or conversely an underrun at a certain value.
Monte Carlo statistics, it's just they're kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. So
Can we serve Monte Carlo sandwiches at the Monte Carlo meetings?
We just can't get federal grant reimbursement for
That's fine.
And as a guy that used to run these things all the time, your most accurate run is your second run. Anything after the second run, you're trying to shape the curve. And I was really good at shaping the curve.
So we're baselining it now so that we have a baseline model, and then we will run it most likely twice, and then whatever comes out is the number. So.
Okay, let's move on.
And just one other thing, we did join up with FHWA to do it so that it meets their expectations as well, so that we're all on the same page on risk. So that was one of the main things.
the one thing that we've got one meeting to do the same thing.
I'm sorry?
It's the one process that we have one meeting with everybody.
Yes, that was our target.
That is the goal.
That's still the goal.
Is that gonna be a public meeting?
Can you pull back up the CSRA? Yes, we would like to.
Sorry to ask that on, but yeah, but
No, we are working with FHWA to make sure it's okay, because sometimes there are proprietary information in some of those.
okay.
But right now we're planning to do that from the authority standpoint.
I'd like to recognize right now, Marla joins us, so she's online.
Marla.
And go ahead, Mike, continue.
So just go down to part of the process and part of this being a federal process, we had to submit a scope and schedule. We've got to submit an agenda. So we've been working with FHWA to get those items finalized. Keep going down to the schedule portion. So this is in your packet. I won't go through every date on here, but you can see kind of the dates, the plan. Right now, the workshop, so if you will mark your calendars, probably the most important part is the workshop days. We're planning to do that the week of February 24th. So you'll see day one. Day one is with the contractor. Day two is without the contractor. And that is just give the owner some independence on how they're allocating contingencies and things on the project. We will then run the model on the third day. And then if we need another day because day 1, 2, or 3 ran over, then we have a 4th day as a contingency day. The plan is right now we will do those here. It'll most likely be at the Hampton in Hood River is where we're planning to do it. But just we'll get invites out. And like I said, once we know and we get a response back from FHWA and making it public, then we will get that out to everybody.
And every day would be a public meeting.
We will have to note, yes, so we want to get that as soon as we can because we'll have to notice the whole week so that it can be set up that way.
Jeez.
The risk register meeting workshops for all of us here are really important because it will give you a real feel of the project, where the true risks are on the project and going forward, where we have to pay attention to try and mitigate those risks. Before you go to the next one, Mike.
Yes.
I'd like to step back. Doug is ready to give a brief overview on the governance, admin and operations group.
One thing before you, I want to make sure, Doug, since you're leading that, one of those other informational items that's going to impact that or is another reason why we need to bring somebody on is at our training, we were found out that we need to have somebody of responsible charge, they call it, that works for the agency. So that is a real driving factor in getting this done for the authority sooner than later, is to have this person of responsible charge. So in the packet, Doug, there's a couple documents you can take a look at around the requirements for that. That just gives you a little more background or requirement for the authority to act fairly quickly on this responsible charge person.
Marla's.
Okay, Doug, if you could.
Marla's got her hand up.
Yeah, Marla, go ahead.
Hi, guys. I just had a quick question regarding the risk workshop overview when it comes to the days, or an idea about the time span on each of those days. And also, are we considering convening during the evening, anticipating needing to work around schedules of commissioners, but also making it more accessible to the public?
Yeah, we have not set times for those yet, but that's a good point. We should try to have them. They usually tend to be all day, but we could try to start those later. Yeah, we could talk through that and set the agendas to try to accommodate that.
It would probably be helpful to know from the authority who would like to attend. And if you have restrictions on.
And what I'm hearing, it sounds like there's enough interest from the authority, unless FHW says there's some guiding rule that we cannot make it a public meeting, that the preference is for the authority to make this a public meeting.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Well, if for no other reason, because we would like to make sure that our commissioners can attend and participate.
Right. They're not usually public meetings.
Typically are not.
Yeah. The reason we would make it a public meeting is so that we can all attend.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
That is correct.
Okay, Doug, sorry.
Okay, thank you for that information. Can you resend all the workshop information details on that I need?
Yeah, we'll get you that information. Yeah.
Be helpful. So admittedly, this is me dropping the ball, but we have a draft of the job description ready. It's pretty good. Open items, once that draft is completed, we'll need to share it with the rest of the board. We have not gotten a salary pay range as of yet. And then we'll, once we have both of those, we'll need to submit it to the board, I think is the next step for review, and then ultimately get the job posted. But we should be ready to go relatively quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, Doug, we may set up a side meeting with you as well, just to go over some of the federal requirements.
That'd be helpful for me.
overhead and, payment and all that stuff. So you have an idea of what may be required there as well for FAR and some of that stuff.
Yep, that would be helpful for me. I'm not used to having to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Pretty sure your folks don't get paid by federal grants, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all kinds of fun stuff that you'll have to deal with.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Let's go back. Informational items were on NEPA.
Hey, for the record, I'm Christy Duncan. I'm new to this group. I work with HNTB. Mike and I are coordinating daily on the NEPA process. And I have a couple of updates for you. The first one is that NEPA reevaluation, that's the one document that I think has received the most attention recently, is now in page turn only review with FHWA. And that is the final version of that document. We expect signatures mid-February. So that is a major step forward for the project. I understand the Section 106 Memorandum of Agreement, also important for this project, is planned to be completed by the end of this month. This next week, there'll be an over-the-shoulder review with ODOT FHWA. That document is looking very firm too. And that's a big win, getting that to that point. I want to talk a little bit about the FEIS ROD, which is what everyone is most focused on. All of these, the two that I just mentioned, feed into that. Right now, the FEIS ROD is on its way to ODOT with some recent revisions. And what we hope will happen in the next few weeks is, a few months, I should say, is review by FHWA and then a cooperating agency review. And this is the final document. We don't expect any major changes at this point. That cooperating agency review is the Army Corps, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Coast Guard, whose feedback we really want to make sure we get, and WashDOT. In addition, there's a mandatory period for FHWA to do a legal sufficiency review. And what they do is they take the entire NEPA package, everything from day one that was ever published, along with the administrative record, and they sit down and make sure that everything that is needed to meet NEPA and they can check the box and make sure nothing has been overlooked. And they have a standard requirement that takes them about a month, plus or minus. So that's an unavoidable amount of time. We expect the final document to be circulating for signatures by the end of May. And that following signatures, there will be, and I want to remind everyone, once a document is signed, there's an appeal period, a standard appeal period. And until the appeal period is closed, then we can move forward with other requirements and permits. So that's kind of an update. I have a kudo I wanted to share. I want everyone to hear this because this is a big deal. In December, the Washington State Department of Historic Preservation, along with Oregon SHPO, which is State Historic Preservation Office, both signed the agreement, the joint findings of effect under Section 106. And that is it happened in December, just before Christmas, and a lot of folks probably weren't aware. So I just wanted to repeat that and have you guys know that you have a balloon that should go up for this, and let everybody, if you can, let the Section 106 team know that this is a good thing and you guys are proud to hear about it. And that's kind of my update for today, and I'm glad to answer any questions.
So of course, the ROD is holding us up from construction. We got to have that in place before we can start moving dirt or digging holes.
Got it.
So,
okay. Any other questions?
Leslie, so SHPO and Washington State Historic Preservation, did they make a determination of non-significance, or what does that mean, or what's the instrument of that decision?
Yeah, so in this case, it's not a significance, non-significance. What they agreed on was something called the findings of effect. And in the case for this project, you have a historic bridge that will be demolished. And so that's considered an adverse effect in it doesn't matter that it's all agreed that that's really a good thing. It just falls in this category that a historic feature is no longer going to be on the landscape anymore. And as a result of this findings of effect, they basically are saying your mitigation package, once signed, will be accepted as well. So they're basically putting their stamp on it, saying the direction you're going is perfectly fine, keep going, get the rest of these things in line, and you know, there's not going to be any issues. And as you know, when you have a findings of effect that is, you're probably aware, that is considered really important, the mitigation package, as you were hearing this morning, is multifold. There's a lot of different things that people expect to happen in order to compensate for that adverse effect. Documentation, record keeping, public information, and that's all to compensate for losing a historic feature.
Okay, let's move on. I guess financial report for December.
I don't think that's.
No, not this time.
Yeah, that's for next meeting.
No, I think for Bobby.
Oh, this is her full.
That's a farm report.
This is our,
Right, it's the total.
She's on, she's on, yeah.
I'm here and
Yeah.
the information's in your packet and I'm here. There isn't a lot to report. It's the same old story and it's not time to be super concerned yet about our traffic across the bridge. But CDM Smith and I are both really digging into this because it's impacting both the funding of the reserve fund and also, of course, the bridge itself and what we have available for maintenance and et cetera, at the port. So I'm really digging into, you know, why is the traffic down? And is this just kind of, I mean, I believe that Grant Folson had talked about how in the summer they saw lower tourist numbers in Hood River. And so we're working on this to figure out what does this mean that we've been seeing lower traffic numbers across the bridge. So we'll definitely be looking into that. CDM Smith is expecting to have some numbers for us at the end of this, probably the beginning of February. And then they're going to be working on a draft report that we'll probably get late March, early April of the traffic and revenue study that they're doing, which supports the TIFIA loan. We have to have that done in order to get the TIFIA loan because it supports the fact that this bridge will be able to pay back the debt that we would be issuing under that. So we're working on that. And then the only other thing that was a highlight, probably in this point, it's more of a highlight for the Port of Hood River than it is for the Bridge Authority, but we did finally get Federal Highways. They signed off on our request for reimbursement under the build grant, and it went through the Delphi system, which is a federal grant reimbursement system that is a bit clunky still. But the money did come in and it is actually sitting in your bank account, the Bridge Authority's bank account, even though the money technically belongs to the Port of Hood River. But I was happy to see that the money got back to Hood River in some form or another at this point, and we'll be working on how that gets transferred and all of that. But there's
so the balance in that account, if I remember right, was right at about $4.9 million.
The money that was reimbursed from the feds was about 4.5 million. And then your reserve fund has about it has 4.7 in the report that I gave you, but then I transferred money. I always, obviously, after the toll report comes through, then I transfer money in the very first part of the next month. And so I've transferred a little over 2 million in there for December. And so, yes, right now your LGIP, which is your reserve fund, your reserve fund is sitting at about 4.9 million, which is your money for the reserve. And then the 4.5 million that is sitting in the bank account technically belongs to the port. So.
The children lets you spend it first, but.
But Mike Shannon is not a signer on the account, so so that would be Mike Fox and Jake Anderson and myself. So I think we'll be keeping an eye on that.
Any other questions for Debbie?
That $4.5 million from federal was draining down the build $25 million grants. The reason there are some leftover is that they want to see the deliverables that tied to the agreement, which is a minimum 15% engineering drawing, which we do have. But like we talked about earlier, they want to see if the Kiewit who developed that document got paid. They need a proof of payment, but because of the money to pay that part is tied with the 5187, we cannot provide that to federal. So it's kind of all intertwined together.
I'm glad you're here. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Mike, Kiewit, phase one.
Yeah, can you go back to what phase 1B? This was just to make you all aware of our negotiations with Kiewit and the timing and process. I do have a question on the committees that would like to see this along the way. If there's other committees that would like to be added in here, let us know. We will have to ask you to fit in the schedule. And we'll work with you on what that looks like. But if other committees want to be added in here, just let us know.
Well, I'll say ENC wants to be involved.
We did assume that the finance and the ENC would be.
I would hope so, yeah.
If others do, please let us know.
Along the way, the board approval will be happening on March 24th to be able to execute and issue an NTP to Kiewit on April 2nd. And we are starting negotiating, sending the scope of work and finalizing the scope with Kiewit right now. And we'll come back to ENC committee at least 3 times. And first one will be when we finalize our scope. And second is when we get their cost proposal and while we are negotiating to brief you how it goes and conform with the strategy. And then final will be to get the consensus to go to the board approval on March 24th. And if there's any other committees to get involved, just let us know. We can put it in the schedule.
So this Thursday, we're having an ENC meeting. And hopefully during that meeting, you're bringing the definition of 1B deliverables to that meeting?
No, that we will bring the final scope of work on February 5th for phase 1B. This Wednesday, we'll bring phase 1A extension scope of work.
No, I think we're talking 2 different things.
We are.
Okay. Granted, there's an extension. I understand that. The other piece of it, you're going to be negotiating with Kiewit on this whole amendment. The first thing that you need is what is the definition of completeness of 1B?
Right.
And we in the ENC committee would like to understand what that definition is before you go too far.
Yes, we'll bring it to you this Wednesday then.
Is our meeting Wednesday, sir, or is it
Thursday? I think
Wednesday? Wednesday, I was making sure that because Thursday is like.
It's Wednesday.
Don't mess with me like that.
Geez. Mr. Flax.
But both of the meetings are on Wednesday.
Yeah,
that's fine.
back on.
1 to 3, 3:30 to 5:30.
Yeah, we can talk about that. We'll bring that to the conversation. Yeah, it's the expectation of what we're getting out of 1B. What's the deliverables?
Right.
Yes, Marla.
I just have a question or maybe confirmation. So seeing this and anticipating, it seems we're not really effective with phase 1B as it relates to the work Kiewit's doing until it's executed in April. And in these other parts of the project, we're already considering ourselves operating under a phase 1B, which seems like it'll raise confusion. And I guess I'm just looking for clarity of how are we functioning on the communication side of this project or in some of these other entities within HNTB where we authorized a phase 1B that's effective January 1. And now we're calling this the phase 1B specific to the construction side of the project and design under Kiewit. I see that causing confusion. Should we be rethinking our terminology, especially knowing we just entered what we're considering a next phase effective at the start of this year, but it seems that that's a phase separate and removed from this work, which is being understood collectively as the true phase 1B of the actual bridge project.
Yeah, and you're correct that it is confusing, and we've talked a little bit about that. What our phase 1B is within the 2-year time frame. So phase 1B is the design portion of the project. So it is the next phase after what we had termed phase 1A. So phase 1B is to take the design from 15% through a signed and sealed set of plans. That's technically the phase 1B design work. What the contract for HNTB was a 2-year extension, and that work included, because we're doing like right away and management services and all that, our phase 1B included ends of it that we're negotiating with Kiewit, and then on the other end we'll be finalizing and negotiating for phase 2, where Kiewit's is more defined as just phase 1B. So it is a little bit confusing because ours has a tail and an end that are kind of getting you from phase 1A to phase 1B, and then getting you from phase 1B to phase 2.
Yeah, HNTB's work includes to execute the PDB's phase 1B contract amendment as well. So we're always coming a little ahead of them.
Maybe to help this is to put together a real simple little diagram that shows the 2 ends for HNTB that's considered 1B, and what the scope is, or the little shorter duration for Kiewit. And then you can see from the 2 ends how HNTB gets into 2, those kinds of things. That may be a graphic that would be helpful.
And Marla, I had the same question back in December when we were having this discussion. I was originally really pushing to have them linked together. And Mike was able to sell me on it, with the explanation that, look, we're prepping for it, and we're also taking and incorporating the things from phase 1A and bringing them into phase 1B. And so really it's more of just an extension of what the agreement that we already had with HNTB was, and that's why we were able to move in at that time, because they did have money still left available that they hadn't spent. And I said, well, why don't we just do an extension and keep them together? And then it really made sense with the actual change in the work that was being required to prep for that.
So going back to Marla's point, though, if it took us 3 people to explain why in a commission meeting, we're all commissioners, and Marla had a question, and she was just asking for clarification and clear communication with the public, and we want the public to understand. I just want to re-highlight what Marla said. We could have on the contract, it's called 1B, but is there a way that we can public facing external documents that makes it easier to understand? Maybe it's a graph, but I want it, I understand we understand it, but it did take 3 of us to explain it to Marla, and she is involved in understanding. So I just want to make sure we bring that up again.
I would really encourage us to put together a graphic and then sit down with Marla and see if that brings forth that understanding. If not, then adjust the graphic until we find something that fits well.
Yeah, I guess my recommendation would be potentially considering new language. To me, it's even in this meeting as an example. Jessica earlier referenced that we're working on the phase 1B comps plan, especially for legislative sessions, but that's confusing for someone to catch in a, 5-minute blurb about this project when clearly here over on the design side, that part of this project is not considering phase 1B in execution until almost the end of the entire Washington legislative session. So it makes me feel like the operation of the authority, which the charge is the successful completion of this project. But I feel like everything, to Jake's point, that we then were approving and how Mike made a case to Jake about how we're entering into the next phase of a project, to me, those are different terms in a different lane. That's maybe the umbrella of we are in phase 2 of the project, or we're in phase B of the project, which includes the phase 1B of the design and construction component. But I am very leery of continuing what seems to be where we are right now, which is using the same term and giving it different definitions or meanings based on where we're talking about it. So if this is where we want to own phase 1B, the work that Kiewit's doing, we need a new way of talking about how we're currently operating the entire authority and our focus of work in 2025 and how that's going to support the phase 1B of this element of the project. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we can work with you, Marla, on the language of that. I mean, I get what you're saying. Yeah, and it wouldn't have been as gray had we been able to start the 1B for everybody had we had the funding to start it in January like we had planned. But yeah, we can work on the language on it. There's specific language to the project, which is phase 1A, phase 1B, phase 2. And then there's contract extensions and contract amendments that probably shouldn't use that same language.
Yeah. Okay.
Good comments. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. I think we already talked about person of responsible charge,
We
right?
did, and we'll follow up with Doug. The next one is the 2025 meeting schedule. There are 3 dates that are close to holidays that we wanted to see if we wanted to adjust, cancel, move, whatever the authority would like to do. It may require a motion to do that. But we just wanted to open it up right now for discussion. We can come back and give you alternate dates if you want, but
Let's do that. Why don't you come back and give this alternate?
I would propose, I feel like this is maybe something for the governance committee to work on. I mean, typically an entity will have, in bylaws outlining how they handle holidays. And I think we just need to come up with what that general language is of when a meeting falls on an actual holiday, when we then meet, or is there a determination when a meeting's within a certain window around a holiday? But it seems like something where we should just get structure from that committee of how we function. I'd be more supportive of that versus like a year-on-year consideration of, when a meeting's within a range of a holiday.
Doug, can you take that on and bring it into your committee?
I don't know if Doug's there, but yes, that was a great idea, Marlo. We will definitely bring that in front of our next governance committee meeting.
And I assume the date, the second date on there is supposed to be October 13th and not the 16th. The 13th.
Okay, let's keep going, guys. Upcoming action items.
no real changes here to talk about.
Okay. No presentations. We do want to let folks know that we are setting up a meeting with IBR.
Yes.
In
February 12th.
Yeah. February 12th, where there's a few of us going down to meet with that team.
Information sharing.
Yep. So we're gonna try and look at our quantities versus their quantities, our costs versus their costs on a unit rate basis to see if we can figure out why we're so much more expensive than they are. So stay tuned. Some of the things that this may lead to, which may be of interest to government relations, if we can build a relationship with that team, and it seems like they want to, there may be an opportunity that we could jointly go to Joint Transportation Committee and give a briefing on both projects to the committee to show them that we're actually working together instead of in competition. Potentially. So, stay tuned.
The Hood River White Sand.
Anything to increase the level.
Working group.
Yeah. I think there's just, they came to the meeting we had in Hood River, on Progressive Design Build. And we went to lunch with them, and I thought it was very fruitful because they have a lot of experiences that we've had, and we have some pitfalls that we don't want them to have. And to keep that communication going, I think is going to go a long ways for us. And I think it's pretty obvious why their numbers are much lower than ours, because they haven't updated their numbers publicly in a long time. But still, there's a lot of knowledge to be gained from working together with them, I think, especially from our side.
Yeah. So that's just a heads up. Anything else, Mike, that you want to bring up?
No, that's everything.
Okay, let's go around the room. Anybody have anything else that you want to bring up?
I would just say Happy New Year, everyone. We survived another year. Thank you all for continuing to serve.
Bills are playing next Sunday. The Buffalo Bills are playing. It's going to be a really good game. Everyone should watch. They won yesterday.
In Buffalo? Anybody out there in
Electronic
land? Okay, with that, I would move that we close the meeting at 3:31 p.m., 29 minutes early.
And setting the bar pretty high there. Starting the year off right. So.
I'm sensing a tally.